Welcome to Equal Ground Headlines. I am Sir Jacob Downley, bringing you balanced coverage on our top stories of the day. If you appreciate journalism that explains, not inflames, hit like and subscribe to Equal Ground Headlines. On Capitol Hill, a budget showdown is brewing as Republicans race to enact President Trump's sweeping domestic agenda. GOP lawmakers are attempting to roll a host of priorities: tax cuts, spending increases, and deficit reduction into one enormous package, which they hope to pass in the coming weeks. It's an ambitious plan that touches everything from tax cuts and Pentagon funding increases to expanded border security spending, paired with cuts intended to offset the costs. The legislation also crucially aims to raise the federal debt ceiling, since without congressional action the U.S. could hit its borrowing limit and face default later this year. In essence, Republicans are striving for a one-stop, big, beautiful budget bill, as President Trump likes to call it, to achieve many of his second-term promises in one sweep. However, party unity is proving to be a challenge. Yes, the GOP controls both the House and Senate, a change from Trump's first term, but their majorities are slim in each chamber. It is certainly the public announcement. That means virtually every Republican vote is needed to pass such a partisan package, especially since Democrats are firmly opposed to much. Already, fissures have appeared between hardline conservatives and more moderate Republicans on the scope of spending cuts. The House of Representatives barely approved a preliminary budget resolution before spring recess, squeaking by with a handful of votes, an early sign of the tussles within the party. In the Senate, Majority Leader John Thune faces a similar balancing act with only a 1 or 2 vote cushion. One major sticking point is the magnitude of spending reductions. House committees have been instructed to slash at least $1.50 trillion from current spending levels, reflecting conservatives' demands to shrink government, whereas the Senate's budget framework calls for only about $4 billion in cuts, essentially a token amount. That astronomical gap will have to be reconciled. Programs like Medicaid, food assistance, and federal pensions could be on the chopping block to meet the House's target. But senators in battleground states may balk at voting for deep cuts that could prove unpopular. Republicans are employing a special process called reconciliation to advance this bill. Reconciliation bills can pass the Senate with a simple majority, avoiding any filibuster, a crucial tool given Democrats' objections. But the flip side is that with 51 votes needed, Senate Republicans cannot afford a single defection if their majority is 51-49. And similarly in the House, Speaker Mike Johnson can only lose a few votes from his thin majority. They have a very slim majority. Can they actually keep the entire conference together in both chambers? Asks Josh Chaffetz, a law professor observing the process. It's a pointed question, as the GOP hasn't attempted legislation of this scope yet in Trump's new term, and internal divisions are already apparent. Some lawmakers from high-tax states worry about provisions making Trump's previous tax cuts permanent, which could limit state and local tax deductions for their constituents. Defense hawks want even more Pentagon spending than currently budgeted, while fiscal hawks want to ensure the debt doesn't balloon. Then there's the volatile issue of border security. Trump is pushing for increased funding for border agents, and perhaps even more wall construction, which moderates support in principle, though details need ironing out. Non necessary. One reason for the rush is the debt ceiling deadline looming. The Treasury Department has indicated the U.S. will likely exhaust its borrowing authority and risk default by as early as August if the ceiling isn't raised. Kanta, Migs, as he helps see. Or then see it come out. Bondi, Testos, but Republicans see an opportunity to use the must-pass nature of the debt limit to force through their broader fiscal agenda. Essentially, to Democrats, will raise the debt ceiling, but alongside all these changes we want. It's a bold gambit. In public, President Trump has downplayed the risk of default, but privately, his officials know that failing to extend the debt limit would be catastrophic. Thus, Speaker Johnson set an aggressive timetable, aiming to get the massive bill to Trump's desk by Memorial Day, late May. That timeline is widely viewed as optimistic, if not unrealistic. Lawmakers have to resolve their differences and draft complex legislation that can pass both chambers, all in a matter of weeks. By comparison, major bills in the past have taken months of negotiation. Democrats, though currently sidelined, have not been silent. They uniformly oppose the emerging GOP bill, calling it a giveaway to the wealthy through tax cut extensions, at the expense of working families through spending cuts. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has vowed that Democrats will not support hostage-taking over the debt ceiling, raising the prospect of a standoff if Republican unity falters. In the Senate, because reconciliation only covers budgetary items, Democrats have limited procedural ways to intervene, but they can wage a public messaging battle. Already, Senate Democrats blocked a Republican attempt to pass an abortion-related measure that the GOP tried to fast-track, signaling that Democrats will resist policy add-ons they see as extreme. However, the real fight is within the GOP itself. Republican leaders know that failure to pass a budget and debt deal with control of Congress would be politically damaging. Conversely, success would allow Trump to claim a landmark achievement. The permanent extension of his tax cuts from 2017, a significant trim of domestic programs fulfilling conservative promises, full funding for his border security plans, and avoidance of a debt crisis. As negotiations continue mostly behind closed doors, Washington insiders are keenly aware of the stakes. The coming weeks will test the limits of Republican cohesion. If Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune can wrangle their factions and deliver a comprehensive bill, President Trump will get to sign a far-reaching conservative policy overhaul into law. If not, we could see either a scaled-back compromise or a slide toward another fiscal cliff as the debt ceiling X-date draws nearer. For now, committees in both chambers are hastily marking up portions of the legislation. The nation awaits a clearer picture of what this one big bill entails, and whether it can truly muster the votes. In the end, the outcome will profoundly influence America's fiscal trajectory, from taxes and spending to the fundamental question of how or if the country pays its bills come this summer.